Podcast and Chill has interviewed a lot of legendary people that are internationally recognized, from the likes of Dr. Kani, whom is currently known for playing the role of the Black Panther's late father.
You're a good man with a good heart, and it's hard for a good man to be king.
Dame Dash, who is an American hip-hop legend that co-owned Rockefeller alongside Jay-Z, and DJ Coffee, who is a Grammy Award winner for Best Dance Electric Album in 2022. I mean, no disrespect to anyone I talk about in this video. This video is strictly for educational or entertainment purposes. Everything I'm about to say is just information that I have found on the internet and have compiled it into one video. One thing Macg never shies away from is expressing who he would love to interview on his platform next. He even went to the extent of making a hashtag Trevor Noah answer Macg trend on Twitter after DMing him for 3 months straight with no reply from Trevor or his team. Trevor Noah is a South African comedian, writer, producer, political commentator, and a former television host of The Daily Show on Comedy Central. Noah has also won various awards, including a Primetime Emmy Award from 11 nominations. In 2017 and 2018, he was named one of the 35 most powerful people in New York media by The Hollywood Reporter. And in 2018, he was named one of the 100 most influential people in the world. With such accolades, it is understandable why Macg would go through such lengths just to get Trevor Noah's attention. But why has Trevor Noah not responded to the Podcast and Chill's plea? Many South Africans have stated that they would never go to the Podcast and Chill platform because the podcast ruins careers. We don't know whether that's the reason why Trevor has not recognized Macg, but we can't disregard the probability of Trevor's team knowing about the controversial podcast, especially after the controversial interview of Ari Lennox that got recognized by one of the biggest hip-hop podcasts in America, Joe Budden, as well as Charlemagne the God on The Breakfast Club. Surely Trevor Noah must have heard about this. But apart from any controversy, Trevor was and still is a very busy man. At the time of Macg's plea, Trevor was busy preparing to host the 63rd Grammy Awards and has since hosted the 2022 White House Correspondents' Dinner. So if Trevor had to reply to Macg and finally set foot on the Podcast and Chill platform, what is it to be expected from this interview? Podcast and Chill has had a total of 8 comedians thus far, so let's make a compilation of the things Trevor Noah is to expect on the platform. One of the first comedians to ever step foot on Podcast and Chill and is now regarded as family is Mpho Pops. He made his first appearance on the 4th of July 2019, which marks the 68th episode of the Podcast and Chill, and the episode is currently sitting at 117k views. He would later return after the podcast had grown rapidly on the 28th of April 2022. This is episode 346, with a duration of 1 hour and 40 minutes, and is currently sitting on 1 million views. However, this would not be the last time Mpho Pops reaches 1 million views on the show, because on the 19th of September 2022, Mpho would return as a stand-in for Saul since Saul Penduga was not feeling well. It was episode 392 that was 1 hour and 27 minutes and peaked at 1.2 million views. So as expected, if a comedian is around, you are bound to laugh throughout the show. So I guess that is why many chillers would dub this particular episode as the best episode to have come in 2022 in the comment section. Another comedian that has returned more than once on the podcast is Loyiso Kola. His first appearance was on the 29th of November 2019, which marked episode 109 and is sitting at 43k views with a duration of 1 hour. Topics such as Loyiso being a vegan and him moving to London were discussed, as well as soccer and religion. But Macg himself would dub this interview as being one of his worst interviews.
Loyiso Kola will go down as having one of the worst interviews on the podcast ever. Oh, yeah.
However, Loyiso would return to the platform to redeem himself on the 23rd of March 2023. Loyiso not only made his way back to South Africa, but podcast and chill as well. It was episode 438 and durated for a full 2 hours. The views are currently sitting at 498k. And though this was one of the funny comedian interviews, I found it to be very interesting and informative. Another veteran in the comedy industry that has graced Podcast and Chill is Trevor Noah on the 3rd of December 2020. Serious topics such as Trevor's addiction to substances and his rehab journey were discussed in episode 207 that went on for 1 hour and 24 minutes. But as suspected, a couple of jokes were made here and there, and this episode is currently sitting at 363k views. After Thomas Mo disappeared from the entire industry, one of his first appearances to vindicate himself after being accused of rape by Lerato Molloy was on the Podcast and Chill. I think it is safe to say that this was not a regular interview, but a platform for Thomas Mo to narrate the events that transpired from his own perspective. The chillers tuned in numbers, and the episode is currently sitting at the number 6 most watched interviews, which is currently sitting at 1.4 million views. This was episode 416, and it aired on the 8th of December 2022. The first time I personally heard of ayahuasca was episode 411 with Eugene Koza that aired on the 21st of November 2022. His storytelling of his experience was so intriguing that one could not help but imagine themselves in the experience itself. This interview, or friend of the show rather, was also a masked announcement of Eugene returning to the industry after a 5-year hiatus. This particular episode is currently peaking at 664k views. We can safely say that Donovan Goliath is one of the poster boys for corporate comedy. However, he was heavily scrutinized after he hosted season 2 of Real Housewives of Durban. He briefly spoke about this on episode 365 of Podcast and Chill that aired on the 30th of June 2022 and is currently sitting at 257k views. The comedian world is easily a male-dominated industry, but two of the most biggest names in comedy, which happen to be female, have graced Podcast and Chill with Macg. First to be interviewed on the Podcast and Chill is Celeste Ntuli, and I must say, this happens to be one of my personal favorites. Many of us got introduced to her on Isibaya, but she did an amazing job in telling us about her background on episode 304 of Podcast and Chill. She also shared her thoughts on racism, cancel culture, and the female autonomy. This episode aired on the 18th of November 2021 and is currently peaking at 823k views. Last but hopefully not least, a lady in comedy as well is the beloved Tumi Morake, who shared a very great part of her story, from her childhood up until where she is currently situated. This was episode 440 of the Podcast and Chill and is currently peaking at 491k views, which aired on the 20th of March 2023. So from all of these interviews, we can say that Trevor Noah can expect to be interviewed about his background and what he is currently busy with. And by his own will, he can share something that may or may not end up being controversial.